Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Made to Change the World podcast. This is going to be not only a really insightful time, but a fun time because I have not only Camille with me again as my co-host, but also professional comedian and just an hilarious man of God, Derrick Tennant. And so
No
we're excited to
pressure,
be
right?
here. Thanks for being here, Derrick.
Thank you.
And Camille, as always, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. It's always my pleasure. I'm stoked for today's conversation with Derrick.
Me too.
Yeah, it's really quite interesting. At church we had this guy come and speak, and I could not stop laughing. And I was like, Derrick, you got to come be on our podcast one of these days because life, and this is during all the coronavirus stuff several months ago, and it's just a tough time, and all these guys, there's a men's event, and everybody's just laughing the whole time, and I'm like, this is part of what life needs to be. If we're really living for God, it's not all tough stuff. Like there's a lot of things that are joyful, and we need to focus on those as well. I don't think Jesus was a miserable, boring guy, or they wouldn't have him at parties and do all this other stuff. And so, right. And a lot, we Christians should learn from that. And Derrick absolutely has, and he brings a lot of joy to people's lives. And so I'm excited to have him here, and I'm sure he'll make you laugh, but also make you think a lot and help you grow.
I hope so.
Any other things, Derrick, you want to add as far as we get it kicked off here about yourself?
No, man, I'm just blessed to be here. I'm excited. This is a crazy world with everything being virtual now. So this is kind of the new norm, right?
Yeah. How long have you been a Christian, by the way?
My folks were saved when I was a baby, and so I was sort of brought up they were saved in a Wesleyan church, and so I only remember growing up with parents that loved me and taught me about God. So I was baptized when I was 14, but always kind of grew up in the church, so to speak. So pretty blessed that way.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
I did too. I grew up in a church that way, but I didn't get serious till later, which is it's tough. It's better if you do it earlier. It's really cool.
Yeah, my parents are just amazing. Like, it's funny because they got saved when I was literally one, and the amount of wisdom that they had, even just with us growing up, there's 4 of us kids. It's only by God that they had the God and James Dobson. I think they were big studiers of his parenting books and everything. So they now do teach seminars on parenting and that kind of thing. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah, they're awesome.
You grew up in a really good Christian family, which is fantastic. And how did you get into comedy? Like most people don't even think of that. It's a tough field. How'd you get into that?
Yeah, I didn't, it's funny. I never, like, growing up, I never was like, oh, comedy's awesome, or I love stand-up comedy. I didn't really know about it, but I would be, so speaking is what I started in. Even when I was a kid, I was 14, the first time I ever did a speaking engagement. And it's kind of funny because it was a church, right? And they asked me to speak to the youth group, and I was sort of popular with sports and, whatever. I was that kid in school. So they asked me to speak to another youth group. And if you grew up in the church, I was like, man, I'm like, youth speakers are supposed to be like, I was in a gang and I killed a guy, my parents beat me, I was on drugs, and then I found Jesus, so I was like, man, I'm like, I wish I was on meth, I didn't have anything to say. I was like, so this is the beauty of our God. So the first talk, like actual, like talk in front of an audience that I ever gave, I titled it, You Don't Need a Tragedy to Have a Testimony. And I talked about how everybody's story is unique. And at that point, my story was, I was the most popular kid, blah, 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 all that stuff.
Yeah.
But God loved me, and the funny part about our God is that now I'm the tragedy guy. And I give this talk all the time about the tragedy. I'm the guy that is, I'm not on meth, but I have some pretty significant tragedy, just heroin, not meth.
Okay, good. The step down drug.
Yeah. I'm just serious. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you mentioned now you're the tragedy guy, so what was the tragedy that was a big turnaround that a lot of people don't know about with you?
Yeah, so, yeah, like I said, 14 years old, I was, I MVP'd in 5 sports. I was the drummer in a band, which was cool back then. I had a mullet, which was awesome.
What, you
I
were
mean,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, see, boy, yeah, it was scary, to say the least. But, like, I literally would go to bed at night and I'd be like, God, I got nothing to ask you for, except maybe, can you make Kelly like me or something like that, but really I had, my parents loved me. I did well in school, great family, all that. And then the night before football practice started for high school, I was a freshman, gonna quarterback, point guard on the basketball team, and, pitching
Jeez.
the baseball team. I was that guy, and, the night before I was watching football with my brother and I just had a headache. And I sort of, long story short, I just like laid down on the floor and he's like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing's wrong, man. I said, I can remember this distinctly. I was like, I'm just tired. I got a headache and I'm going to go to bed. But I was laying on the floor. I didn't know I couldn't get up and I didn't say I couldn't get up, but I just kept saying, I'm tired. I got a headache. I'm going to go to bed. And I'm just thinking about football tomorrow. And my parents put me in the car, they were asking me, what's wrong? And I kept saying, nothing's wrong. I was almost getting mad. I'm like, cause I'm thinking I'm Derrick, like I just got a headache. I'm going to go to bed. It wasn't logical because I was laying on the floor. And then my dad puts me in the back of the station wagon to take me to the hospital. I guess my voice sort of changed and there's something when things are happening in your brain. And the last thing I remember is in the car, my mom is reaching, and this is a station wagon in the 80s, right? So the big vinyl seats in the back, and I just, as soon as he takes off, I slide thump right under the floor of the car. And I'm laying in the back of this station wagon and my mom is reaching over to help me get from the front seat. And she's crying. And I can remember looking at her hand and I know now I was laying on my right side and I wasn't grabbing her hand. And I didn't think I can't grab her hand. But I was like, why am I not grabbing her hand? It just didn't make sense to me. And then everything went black and I went into a coma.
Wow.
And and at the hospital, they told my parents, they didn't know what was happening in my brain, which people still say that today. So that's no different. But they said that I probably was going to die. And they weren't sure what to do. And I had a couple of days later, I had brain surgery. I lived in a wheelchair for a long time. And basically had to start over. I had to learn how to do everything again. The end result now is that, half of my body is paralyzed. Like I can't use my left arm. I walk, but with a limp and people say, look on the bright side. I say, look on the right side, So.
I love that. So, I mean, you're right. Before you had this quote unquote picture perfect
Did you just
life.
say you're right? Get it?
Yeah.
Don't be funnier than me. I should have said that.
So that's why you did it, right? So you could always be right. You can't, no one can say otherwise.
So, sometimes I feel left out.
I wish I had like a thing that could do that.
But I'm all right. Yeah, I know. But they don't stop either, Like you do the YMCA, I do the LOL,
I love it. Well, I mean, no, don't be. But how did you find humor in that, right? Because I'm thinking 14-year-old boy, he's all-star athlete. His life has drastically changed. You're not going to pitch. You're not going to play basketball. You're not going to play football. I mean, did you just immediately become funny, or was there like a dark moment? And how did you get to this point?
No, my family, like I said, I could not have a better family. I'm one of 4 kids. My mom and dad are funny. Growing up, humor was always just a part of our life, right?
Wow.
I mean, like one thing in our family is a wonderful opportunity. Everything's like, I wrecked my bike one time. I was 7 years old. I'm crying. I'm like, this is stupid. I love my bike and it's all jacked up. My tires, and my mom, she actually says to me, she's like, oh, Derrick, what a wonderful opportunity to learn how to fix a bike. I'm like, what? I'm like, you're my mother, like, I don't even know what an opportunity is. Like, give me a tire, but
nice.
But that was a principle that they taught us, growing up that really, impacted me when this happened is that, these obstacles in our life, every one of them is an opportunity, and not just, the air conditioning's not cold enough, but, cancer, death, abortion, paralysis, they're opportunities. It doesn't mean that you like the obstacle, but they are opportunities. And I'm able to say this now as a 50-year-old guy. When I was 14, I wouldn't have expressed it like this. But I wasn't like, yay, I'm paralyzed, when it happened, it wasn't cool. I hated it. Because at first I was like completely paralyzed. I was in a wheelchair. It was 85, right? So my mullet had to be shaved off, which sucked. To dig it. And then my surgery, and this is what the neurology report says. It says random bleeding from point X for an unknown reason. I'm like, is this guy even a doctor? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm not mad at him. The brain surgery saved my life, right? But the scar that he gave me, if you can see, it's in the shape of a question mark. I think that's hilarious.
No way.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? I got a giant question mark for the rest of my life.
That's funny.
And it was the 80s, right? So I have a metal plate up here. That's how they like fuse the bone and everything. And that freaks me out because ever since then I can change my mind with a magnet. You get to the refrigerator, I'm like, I'm starving. No, I'm not. Sorry. But it was hard. I mean, like, because I couldn't wait to get this school that I was going to was across town. It was, good football school, whatever. And I was going to be the new guy. I couldn't wait to get there, new girls, new opportunities, whatever. But I didn't get there. I was in the hospital for 12 weeks, and then when I got there, I was in a and back then you could say it was like, seriously, 1985, the van that brought me to school at noon, so everybody's looking out the window to see this van pull up, huge letters across the side. It says invalid coach. I'm not making that up. Like, that's what there is no political correctness, the invalid coach. And it was a baby blue van and it wasn't, I grew up sort of on the other side of the tracks, right? So there was no hydraulic, cool wheelchair lift. True story. It was a passenger van and they took all of the seats out, but they left the seat belts. And the way they secured my wheelchair, they had a little thing on the floor and then they wrapped the seat belts around the wheels of my wheelchair. That secured me in the van.
Oh, man.
And then my entrance to high school, that I couldn't wait to get to this high school and be the new guy and everything. I pull up in the invalid coach, and the kids are all looking out the window and they don't have a lift. It's just this big metal gate and they just, bam, they drop it on the concrete. Wow. And now any kid that wasn't looking out the window, they're looking out the window. And I come rolling out, I was drooling, my head shaved with the question mark and I'm scrawny. And that was my entrance to high school. So yeah, it was pretty significant change from what I expected. But, and again, I wasn't like so well adjusted at that point. It was tough. I mean, I can say from a God perspective, I never got mad at God. And that's, again, I credit that to the training of my parents. I didn't get mad. That wasn't logical to me. I got frustrated. I didn't understand, but it wasn't anger because to me that was like, and again, I don't think I would have been able to express this at 14, but to get mad at God is like, like he was creating me and he was like, oops, sorry, you're going to be paralyzed. Like, I don't think that happened. I think somehow this is part of God's movie, right? I don't like this part of the movie, but if I trust that he's who he says he is or who we claim that he is, then it doesn't make sense to me, at least. I don't think it's bad to get mad at God. I think he loves any communication that we send his way. But for me, it manifests. And I'm not mad at him. I'm like, but I don't get it, man. Like, how could this possibly be part of the movie, right? I'll say it, if God was small enough to be understood, he wouldn't be big enough to be worshiped, right? Our job is to trust. Wow. And that gives peace, man. I have peace in my life, and I, to some extent I did then, but it was tough. There was kids I watched play football that got scholarships, and I never even played high school football. I'm 50 years old. It's hard for me to even say those words right now that I never played high school football. I punched some holes in some walls and stuff out of frustration, but it wasn't mad at God. I knew that somehow, I knew that he didn't make a mistake. You know what I mean? Like, that this somehow fit, and we'd had some tragedies in our life before. And again, the wonderful opportunity that this was, I can only put quotes at the beginning of a word, by the way. So you just have to...
It's the quote that never ends for you, basically. Right. It keeps going. We never know when the end quote is.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know. It's coming eventually. Yeah. But that, so yeah, just this, that's my life, and a verse that helped me with it, that I probably had read before my injury and it was cool. And, I probably talked about it with a Bible study or whatever, but we all know Philippians 4:13, it's like a Christian's keychain or bumper sticker, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But Paul wrote that in jail, man. And in the verses he wrote before that, Paul said, I've had everything and I've had nothing. And I'm reading that in Philippians when I'm 14. I'm like, wait a minute, like I can, from a 14-year-old perspective of a guy in Syracuse, kid in Syracuse, that made sense. I've had everything because I did before, and then I had nothing. I was drooling on myself in a wheelchair. So it would was like glowing in the dark. And then the next verse says, I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. And I'm struggling with being paralyzed as a 14-year-old. Paul was about to be killed for doing everything right. So if he's got that secret, I want it, so that sort of was the mission. And it made a lot more sense to me then to the power of what we have, what Jesus provided us with,
Yeah.
So if I think about that, because there's a lot of people listening, going through struggles and going through change, right? Is that what got you through change? What's the right way to go through change? Even if you trust in God, and like, where did this stuff come from? And from what you've been through and experienced, what's the right way to go through that?
Yeah, man, there's not, and I don't want to patronize anybody because, my struggle, you don't know what it's like to be paralyzed on your left side. I don't know what it's like to go through a divorce or cancer. You know what I mean? So whatever people listening to or watching are going through, I cannot tell you that I understand. And here's the answer, do this, 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 and this, and this. Sure. But I believe in a God that is perfect, right? That created everything and made no mistakes. So somehow, that doesn't mean, oh, okay, good, I've got cancer. No, that's not what I'm saying. But there's a peace that comes from trusting. I don't know what his will is, but I know it's correct. And so my job is not to understand it or to know why. Like, I hate abortion. I don't know why that exists. Cancer, I work with kids that have cancer and see them die at 4 years old. It doesn't make any sense. I can't imagine how that's part of a perfect God's will. It doesn't make any sense. But God doesn't make sense. You're not supposed to say that in church, but it's true. He doesn't make sense. He's not logical. So what I try to focus, the energy that we take in putting, into why or how could you or whatever, I try to put that into, I trust you, and it's not easy, but it does give you peace, man. And the Bible talks about the peace that passes understanding.
Yeah.
Right. We can't understand. It's got to be past that, it's peace.
Yeah. And I love, sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Well, I feel like there's change, like when change happens and I have to deal with something. So that's part of change. Like something came up, like you talked about, divorce or whatever it is. But there's also change to say, I want to be more of what God made me to be. I'm not going to just sit here and settle for where I'm at. God, what did you make me to be? And how do I get there? How do you focus on that change, like moving forward and really pushing the limits or getting to a bigger perspective in life?
Yeah, that part's exciting when I think about it, because genuinely, I believe that God's perfect. And I think everybody that claims to be a Christian would say that, but to live that out, it's like, man, think about that. The one that created everything that you can see and everything that you are and everyone that's around you is on your team. That's pretty powerful, right? So if in my job, Jesus talked about us, about people and why he came, and he compared us to an animal. And what animal was that?
Sheep. Compared us to an animal.
Sheep, right? We're sheep.
Oh, right. Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Lost sheep.
And well, what's the dumbest animal in the animal kingdom? It's sheep. They can't. That's why they need a shepherd. They can't do anything. They're just like, they just. And I love that. That's Jesus. You said it. He was a cool guy. He was funny. He's like, you're sheep. So we need him, right? We have to have. So for me, that's peaceful, because my job isn't to know everything or understand how or why, but to listen, listen to the shepherd's voice. And that's not easy either. He never claimed it's easy, but he did make it simple, and I live a pretty simple life. I try to focus on simplicity in basically all areas of my life. And Jesus, if you read the Bible, which I believe is truth front to back, Jesus said, love God, love your neighbor. That's it. Mm-hmm. Like literally, that's in red letters, right? Only Jesus and teachers can write in red, right? So, but he was being challenged, and he literally said that. That's so beautiful. Like, to all the pastors in the world, you don't have to talk about anything else.
Yeah.
Jesus said, love God, love your neighbor. And the way he said it then, they had 613 laws that there was 2 parts to each one. And he said, every one of these is tied into this: love God, love your neighbor. So
Amen.
that's all that I try to focus on. I'm not saying I do it every day, but that's what I try to focus on. And that's what we're called to focus on. Love God, love your neighbor. That's beautiful. That's the secret that Paul talked about, right?
Yeah.
100%. And I really appreciate, you said it earlier, but I want to reemphasize it because I think you said it so quickly, but it was such like a big moment, at least for me. My takeaway was when you said, if God was small enough to be understood, he couldn't be big enough to worship. Did I get that right?
Yeah, because we'd be a peer, right? If we can
Yeah.
understand God, then we are God.
Yeah.
And we are not even, sometimes like I'm a very visual thinker, right? So I think about it, like imagine from creation, everybody was colorblind, right? Like, that's just the way God created us. We were colorblind. That would never be a negative thing, right? Like everything we see would be black and white and gray, and that would be fine. Like no one ever would be sad about that, right? Are you with me on this? This is just a little Derrickology for you,
No,
right?
I got you. Yeah.
Then
Because we wouldn't know any different.
Right. You wouldn't, then let's say you die and you go to heaven and it's in color. Can you imagine? No one's ever experienced color. And you're just like, you just be like touching red, trying to figure out, taste it, whatever, I mean, it would be crazy. Now, again, because we're making this up, let's say you came back to earth. I'm just making up a story, right? And you were trying to tell me about heaven. And you said it's in color. Explain that to me.
Right. If you don't even know what color is. Right.
There's my brain cannot, it's not black or white. And I'd be like, oh, so it's gray? You're like, no, it's deeper than. Like, I don't know if you were dead or on drugs, because that doesn't make any, but
Right.
the point is, God's in color, man. And we don't have the capacity here to see or understand color, but we can trust that color exists. And that's peaceful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I try to do, is focus on that. Like, I know that he's in color. I'm not.
Yeah.
But eventually I will be, right? When I get to be with him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for the person going through a ton of change right now, I think that piece that you said was so powerful, which is, I don't even know why. I don't spend energy on the how, because it's too big. I don't understand color, right? But if I can focus my energy on trusting the God that is in control of all things, then that's where you find your purpose through whatever situation that you're in,
and as
or the
you're
change
listening
that you're
to
talking
this,
about.
right? If you're listening to this, dealing with some huge struggles, it can sound like a nice thing that a motivational speaker is saying or something. Well, listen, it's truth, but it has to manifest for you by just getting. I mean, the creator of everything is your friend. He's on your team. Ask him, because just hearing this podcast or whatever isn't going to make you feel, oh, great, I feel so good now.
Right.
No, your struggles are real, and but we're given. Paul said, a secret to contentment in every situation. And I would suggest that his situation was worse than any of ours. I mean, that he was a bad dude. He becomes a good guy, and then everything goes wrong. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And then he gets killed. Like, my situation, I'll take a paralyzed arm over death,
Shipwrecks, beatings, all that.
And all that stuff too. While he was alive, he still had a worse life than all this.
Yeah, could get a lot worse. Speaking of color, if we can't go without saying, you got a shirt that says Friday. Tell us about that.
Well, it's Friday. Doesn't everybody? So I told you I try to live simply. My motto is live simply, love wastefully. That's my my motto. And it's funny, I started the love wastefully thing, and some people think it's a sexual thing, and I'm like, no. It's not the 60s, that's not what I'm trying to say. But if you could imagine, like, this is fun. You think about, sometimes everybody says, what if you won the lottery? What would you do? And that's just like a fun thought to have, right? So I think about it like, what if I had a bank account that no matter what I spent, $1,000, then $2,000 would be put in my bank account. I'd be like, no. Then I bought a house for 100,000, and 200,000 was put into my bank account. Like, think about how you would spend money then. Like, it would be awesome, right? You would just spend what I would call wastefully. You would buy everything, oh, my headphones are dirty, I'll buy new ones, whatever. That's the way you would spend, wastefully. Well, love is the only thing in our lives that we have that sort of bank account for, that will never be any lower or we will always have the capacity to give love, and it never gets lower. Isn't that beautiful? So my suggestion is that we love wastefully the same way, because it's easy to get around that when it's money. Like, oh, I could do that. I could buy another car, another thing. Well, we're given a bank account of love that's unlimited and actually fills up every time we try to empty it. Isn't that beautiful?
That is.
So and then so love wastefully, that's what it means. The live simply is, I mean, I'm a simple guy, I'm a sheep, right? So I love God, love your neighbor. I try to translate that into my life too. So the way that's manifest for me, and I'm not suggesting anybody do what I do, but everything that I own in my life, all my possessions fit into a carry-on bag. It's right over there. I'm in the Marriott right now. It's sitting on the floor over there. And that's everything, and people are like, oh yeah, but you have, no, that's my stuff. Right. And I don't suggest that people should do that. It's crazy. I don't suggest you do that. I mean, my lifestyle allows for me to do this, but I have, so that was when I started doing that. I was living in an apartment in Nashville, which is a great city. But I was spending whatever, $1,000, and I was there 3 days a month. And I'm like, that's a nice hotel if I just go, so that was the motivation. But then I'm a marketing guy, right? So I came up with the idea for the shirts. I have a little t-shirt business there and I have, one shirt for each day. And the reason is that, there's a million guys that are comedians. There's a million guys that are motivational speakers. There's a lot of guys with disabilities, right? I'm the guy with 7 shirts. Right. There's only one. Like whoever's listening is going to remember. There's this weird dude. He only had 7 shirts, so they'll remember that. And so it was marketing. And it makes people laugh. And I really believe we have opportunities daily, if not by the minute, to make people smile or laugh, and the reverse, to get people kicked off. In traffic, it's a great example. If you, instead of flipping somebody off, just smile to them or whatever. I mean, there's so many things daily. I used to carry a jar of Grey Poupon, and if anyone's old enough to remember those commercials,
in the car.
Not, but I used to carry one in the glove box, and I would stop at a red light and beat my horn and ask, "Hey, do you guys need any?" And they're like, and they just look at, and they're like, "What an idiot," But they laughed, and that was in the 80s, and I bet they still remember that, right? So we have this power to, every minute to make people smile by, for me, it just usually manifests in just being a weirdo, like doing things that are off. And the shirts are kind of that, like not so much on Friday, because this isn't out of the ordinary. Like you could have a Friday shirt, right? But a Tuesday shirt or a Wednesday shirt,
right?
Nobody I can't tell you the times people walk by me and they're like, "Oh, dude, I like your shirt." And I'm like, "Yeah, I got 6 more." And then they smile, right? Like instantly. And on the back of them, it says, "Yes, I have one for each day." So sometimes they see that first and they're like, "Excuse me." I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "What's the," "Oh, never mind." Because they see the front, and I should, and I, to clarify, because I know we're going to, I get these comments. So I say I have 7 shirts. The truth is my 7 shirts have sleeves, and they're nice V-neck shirts. But I also have 4 shirts, one of which I'm wearing here, because this says Friday here, but then on the inside it says Saturday, because I don't want to wear my good shirt in the morning when I'm working out, So and I don't have the room in my bag, so I just made 4. So that's why I'm wearing the sleeve. And I named my company 14 Sleeves. Okay.
And so those don't have sleeves.
Right. Like people, like seriously, people will get on my website or my Facebook and be like, "Dude, I saw you have another shirt," and I'm like, "Who's making the rules?" I made this up. And then also I'm like, "What's the name of my company?" They're like 14. Oh, never mind. Because these don't count, so it's just, again, it's just weirdness. See, you're smiling right now, that's just, so that's worth it to me. So I have the shirts, and, I'm wearing my only pair of jeans right now. I mean, that's that actually can get a little awkward, like at the laundromat, Sorry. Now people are wondering, I wonder if his underwear says that too, I'm like, no, that's just ridiculous. My underwear says October, November, December.
They're smart man. Just let it ride for 30 days.
With all of this, how can Christians not take life so seriously? Because I think that's what happens.
That was my question too.
And it's, again, things happen, right? To be laughing about 7 shirts when someone's 4-year-old just got hit by a bus.
Yeah.
They're not going to say, oh yeah, I should just laugh that life is simple. And, so real stuff is happening. I don't want to patronize that because everything we're saying is truth. But there's moments and times and stages of our life where it's not that easy to think. And I'm not ever suggesting it's easy. It's just simple. So even in that horrific moment of our life, we have the same direct access to the secret to contentment in any and every situation. So I'm not suggesting that it's easy, but it's always the same truth. So that I think for me, it's to try to get to where that's your default, right? Is to rest into that. You're still going to get angry. You're still going to have stress. You're still going to have things that happen in your life, but we have direct free access, to love. And it's, Paul says in Galatians, it's kind of funny because he's talking about, it's one of my favorite verses, but it's whenever I write it, like in a speech, it says Galatians 5:6b, and I always put B because the first part of the verse says, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision matters, and I don't want to talk about that to a bunch of teenagers, whatever. Like what's circumcision, But what Paul was addressing is at the time where he was talking, the church was arguing about, like what today would be, can you have seats or does it have to be pews? Do you dunk or do you sprinkle? Do you have a building or do you have like a cool cathedral? And we argue and split over this crap. It's not important. And Paul said, he goes, and so at the time, circumcision was a big deal in that world, like that, whether you have to, don't have to, and he says, certainly it doesn't matter. And the second part of the verse, he says, the only thing that counts. Now, if that's in the Bible, the only thing that counts, and I believe the Bible is true, I want to know what's next. And the next part of the sentence is faith expressing itself through love. Remember, Jesus said, love God, love your neighbor, that's it. And Paul says the only thing that counts is faith expressing itself. So man, the message is so simple. And I just want to encourage people to focus on that. Even it's a truth. So even when in this horrific situation, and I can't describe or know how bad your situation genuinely is right now, the Bible, if we say it's true, it says, man, that we have direct free access. And then John 10:10, right? Jesus says he's come to have life and have it to a full, right? Not I've come so that you can be a Christian and at least you're going to heaven. So that's cool, right? That's not what he said, but you're going to be miserable the rest of your life and no one's going to like you and you can't smoke or drink or go to rated R movies. That's not what he said, None of it's about the rules, and look at Christians, man. I hate to say this, but, if we're the ones that are supposed to have a full life, it's hard to find it. I hate to say it, it's hard to find a Christian that's living a full life, man. And from a psychology standpoint, people are like, well, are you a half full, glass half full guy or a glass half empty guy, right? Your perspective. And I love that thing because, that whole perspective, people are like, which one am I? Well, here's what I did, man. I just got a smaller glass. Now it's full.
Always full.
Right? It's just full. It's like overflowing. Get a little one.
That's why you have a suitcase. Your whole life is in a tiny little suitcase.
Yeah, it's full. I don't have to be half anything. Well, I am half everything actually, but that's a different story.
But see, that's what I'm saying is, there for somebody who is watching, be it a Christian or a non-Christian, and they're like, man, I wish I could just be as joyful or as happy as this guy. Like for someone who struggles with seriousness, I'm thinking about that person, or they don't even know how to laugh because they're just so caught up in that moment. Any encouraging words or anything that?
Yeah, man, I would say they do know how to laugh. There's been times in their life that they've laughed. And again, not to patronize anybody. And some people are serious people and they're wired that way. And that's cool, man. And it's fun. The things that make them laugh are sometimes super clever, and that laughter is just such a tool. The Bible talks about it being the best medicine, right? Yeah. We're all sick, but it's not the same for everybody, right? I just had a thought that left me, but tell me your question again. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So I'm just thinking of the person who they so badly want to laugh, but they just feel like I'm such a serious person. I'm so angry all the time. I'm so frustrated. Like, what would you encourage them to do or try? Or
okay, I'm just beginning the process of writing a book, and a possible title of it was going to be Capacity. I've changed it since. It's going to be Selfish Generosity, which I think is It'll get you to pick it up more than capacity would. So that's what, but it's also something I'm working on. But anyways, capacity is that, that person that you're talking about, I agree 100%. They're a serious person. We all know somebody like that. It's not their personality. I'm just not that kind of person. I get it. What I would suggest from a biblical and from a psychological, just human standpoint, you do have the capacity. It's just we choose when to release the love or the laughter or the silliness, right? It's in there. And I'll give you an example. If every one of us could imagine the one person we wish that we could meet, whoever that, Jennifer Aniston, whatever, your favorite athlete, Tom Brady. I think Brian, you're in Tampa, right? So I have to say that. I'm actually a Jets fan, so it hurt me to say that.
But we saw can all the imagine, pain come from your heart.
But like from an earthly perspective, think of the one person that, man, if I could have lunch with them, that would be awesome. Billy Graham when he was alive, whatever. Yeah. We can all wrap our heads around that. It'd be so cool. Now, let's say you're at your house and there's a knock at the door and it's that person. And they're like, hey, friend, I'm so sorry, but my car just broke down and can I borrow your phone? Yeah. How would you treat that person at that point? You'd be like, dude, you can have my phone. My brother, you want my car? Here, take my car. You can, are you hungry? Can I get you? And, right. We would all do that. Yeah. And that's the correct response in that situation, right? That's what we would all do. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just the way, that's the situation. Now, same situation, you're at home and it's just some dude. And he's like, hey man, my car just broke down. Can I borrow your phone? You'd be like, well, here, I'm going to put the cordless down here. You can just use it. And then when you're done, just leave it and I'll come get it. And let me know if I can do, and that would be the correct response in that scenario. Right. Mm-hmm. But what does that show you? That the scenario is exactly the same, but inside of us is the capacity to do what I would call love, which in that situation we give to the famous person, but not to the stranger. That doesn't mean that one of those is right and wrong. What it shows is that we have in here the opportunity to release that stuff, whether it's laughter, seriousness, silliness, it's in there. We just choose when to let it out based on the situation. And again, I'm not assigning right and wrong to that crazy situation that I just made up, but we choose it. For a guy, I can say it this way, if you go to Subway, right, and the girl that's making your sandwich is 28 and smoking hot, right? How are you going to treat her? You're going to try to make her laugh when she puts the wrong thing on there. Oh, no, I'll eat that. Don't worry about it. It's cool. Right? Right. That's what a guy can relate to what I'm saying right now. And it's just, we're shallow creatures, right? And then the reverse, if she's not that, it's a 6'7" dude, with 3 heads or whatever. I don't know. I'm just making this up, And if they get it wrong, dude, come on, hurry up. I got to get to my thing. You would be, again, the capacity is there. We choose when to give it. A 95-year-old woman comes in the room. Who gets up to give her their seat? Everybody. Yeah. Yeah. A 50-year-old dude that smells funny. Who gets up? Nobody. Yeah. I'm speaking in generalizations, but the point is that we have capacity in here to love, to laugh, to give, and all that. And some people are wired where they typically don't let the good stuff out or give the good stuff. And what I would suggest is to feel that joy that you were describing, Camille. It's ironic. It's not by getting something, it's by giving, right? That's where the selfish generosity comes from, right? Go volunteer somewhere. If you struggle with having joy or feeling, go volunteer at a children's hospital. Or go volunteer at a home, whatever, anywhere, and genuinely give. Yeah. Even if your motivation is just so you would feel some joy, it'll work. Yeah. But when you get to the point where you genuinely desire that giving, oh my gosh, that's why I call it selfish generosity, because it's really not fair. Like the level of joy that you get from it, it's selfish. It's crazy.
And it brings me back to something you said earlier, is most Christians don't live a full life. And that's the full life. When you let those things out, right?
Yeah. And Jesus said it over and over and over. Not only said it, he did it, washing the feet, obviously giving his life ultimately, but his life was completely, he had opportunity to be the man, to be the king, to have everything given to him, everything. And he consistently served and gave in ways that made him, the slave, the lower level, the everything, and we say we believe the Bible. We say that Jesus is the one I want to emulate. Man, if you want some joy, it's free. We have direct access to it. The price has already been paid. It's right there. And we say that we believe this. And I don't want to bust on anybody, but I hate that we miss this. The secret to contentment in any situation. That's I didn't write that, that's the Bible, right? So it's there. It doesn't make everything easy. I don't like that I'm paralyzed, but I love my life.
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
Amen. Speaking of that, I love my life. Can you tell people where to find you and your sister Julie make these amazing shirts and hats and all this stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Where to find you, where to find Julie, where to find.
Well, I gotta, I was hesitant to talk about Julie because that's like a 3-hour podcast.
I'll have to do another one.
As soon as I start talking about Julie, everyone will be like, wasn't there another guy, that was involved, or because you're not going to remember. So Julie's my sister, and she's beautiful. She's funny. She's successful. She owns her own business. She just lights up a room, right? Like everybody. No, like you had to bring it up because you have to, right? Because Julie's that amazing. Yeah. And Julie has Down syndrome, which is an extra chromosome. That's what causes it. My grandfather told her that she doesn't have an extra chromosome, but you and me are missing it.
Yeah.
And he called it the love chromosome because they know how to love better than us. See, they have the capacity, but they were wired by God where that's their default.
Yeah.
Again, I'm speaking in generalizations. Everybody's unique, but I mean, typically with Down syndrome, you're more important than me.
Yeah.
I asked Julie recently. We pre-COVID, we traveled all over the world together, speaking at events and stuff. I said, Julie, let's get some pizza. What's your favorite pizza? And she goes, sausage. And then she thinks, and she goes, well, unless mom's there, then it's mushroom. Because her favorite changes by who's there. Because she knows mom likes mushroom. And my favorite is mushroom because mom's here. Like, duh. And that's so logical to her. Right? And guess who's got joy? Julie.
Yeah.
When your default is to love, to be generous, to give, you have joy.
Yeah.
Think about anybody in your life that that you would label as generous. Are they happy?
Yeah.
That's not Derrickology. Don't you love when psychology discovers things that Jesus said like 2,000 years ago? Like generosity makes you happy. Ooh.
Amazing.
But Julie is, forget anything I'm saying or what any of the three of us are talking about right now. If you need some joy, look up Julie, man. She will give you joy. She has
speaking of that, you guys talk every day, right? On Facebook. Why don't you tell people where to find you guys on your Facebook Live?
Yeah, we do a live every day. So Down syndrome is a third number 21 chromosome. You and I have 2. Julie has 3. So at 3:21 p.m. Eastern, we're on 5 different Facebook pages and 3 different YouTube pages, all at the same time. And you can find it just by Googling, Derrick Tennant or Julie Tennant or the Love Chromosome or juliescoolshirts.com. I suffer from lack of focus. I'm simple, but I got things all over the place. But I just want to love wastefully, right? And Julie does that better than anybody. She's so just Facebook pages, if you just look up my name, or 14 Sleeves, there you go, look up 14 Sleeves. And you can find it. And we're every single day since COVID started. And Julie lives in Syracuse, New York, and I'll be wherever I am. And we get on sort of like this and we broadcast, and there's no, don't expect a structured, at 3:45, we have the guest of the week, or, no, we're just talking. We're just telling jokes, she told me a joke yesterday on the show. What was it? She goes, oh, what do you call a bumblebee? Or what do you call a bee that's having a bad hair day? And I'm like, I don't know. She goes, frisbee.
That's cute.
So try not to laugh at that from a beautiful girl with Down syndrome. Man. If you need some joy, just tune into Julie's show. I'm seriously.
There's a start right there. If you're having some struggle finding joy or laughing, tune in. And Derrick's on YouTube. is my 5-year-old can't stop quoting him, and I'm sitting there laughing. He's coming to our church in a couple of weeks. And so also if you have events or different things and you're looking for somebody who's motivational and hilarious,
please,
find Derrick. For sure.
So all my social media is just at 14 Sleeves. So connect me then if there's any way I can serve you, whatever that means, I mean that. And think about it like I live in your town, because I don't live anywhere. I live there as much as I live anywhere else. So I can be a local guy. So don't worry about the money or any of that stuff,
That's perfect.
And Julie, oh my gosh, she, and if you friend request Julie, you better tell her that you know me, or she'll say no. She doesn't know who you are. She's not. There's another thing with Down syndrome is they just, whatever's up here, man, they just say it, right? So we should learn from that, right?
Yeah.
She got, I'll tell you, this is a great Julie story. Now I know we're going to edit a lot of this out, and that doesn't bother me, but I got to tell you this story if it works. So Julie has a buddy, Eric, that's also got the love chromosome, and he's awesome. He's a big dude, and he loves women, right? And he's such a player, right? Like Camille, he would go up to you if he met you and he'd be like, "Hey, baby," and you would instantly, you'd be like, "Oh, that's so cute," whatever. If I do that, it's like creeper,
Yeah, right. Sorry, Derrick.
Well, don't agree so much. But Julie and Eric are buddies, right? They both have the love chromosome. Julie wants nothing to do with dating. She's just like, ew, which I love as a big brother, right? That's awesome, right? So we're at dinner one night, and we can learn from this in both families. Eric walks around the table. He goes over to Julie. He gets down on one knee, and he grabs Julie's hand in front of all of us, and he kisses her hand. And then in his gruff, confident voice, he's like, "Marry me." And my sister, my dad, first of all, goes, "Time out," And then Julie, she looks up at me, and then she looks back at Eric, and she goes, "How about a high five?" But you got to understand Julie's heart, because she wasn't mocking him. That's a funny story. But Julie's heart, somebody just asked her something that she didn't have the capacity or the desire to have anything to do with. Right. But Julie's flawless heart was like, I want to give him something. Yeah. So where that went for her is she just thought of, she's like, I can give him a high five. So she was totally serious. She's like, how about a high? So here's the lesson, man. Our life is going to give us situations where we don't want anything to do with it. It's not where we wish we were, and we don't have any idea what to do. Well, love is never the wrong answer. Yeah. Right. Isn't that beautiful? And then learn from Eric too, because he's got the love chromosome, right? He's down on one knee. He just got rejected, right? And he does this. He goes, all right. High five. and then we got ice cream, right? Because sometimes life isn't as bad as we think it is. We just need to high five and get some ice cream. You know what I mean?
Oh, man, that's so good. That's so good. We don't always do this, but I think we should end in prayer. Pray for Derrick, and we'll pray for everybody's joy.
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
Lord, thank you so much for this time with Derrick. I thank you for his life. I thank you that at 14, his life didn't end. You didn't take him. You kept him here, different than what he was used to, but powerful. And you use the toughest parts of our lives to be witnesses for you and to encourage others. And I thank you that he uses this, what you've given him, to literally bring joy to people's lives. I pray you protect him. I pray you watch over him. Pray you open every door of favor for him and Julie. And I also pray, Lord, for anybody listening or watching that may struggle with living a full life or having joy or laughing, and most importantly, loving. I pray, Lord, that you would just open the doors of their heart, help them to let go and to let you and to live in faith. In Jesus' name we claim. Amen. So all right, so I wanted to finish with this really gracious gift from Derrick. He's given an offer to everybody who's listening to this podcast for Change the World. So Derrick, go ahead and listen.
Yeah, it's really Julie. I mean, Julie is we have a company, juliescoolshirts.com, and this is one of her hats, Love Wastefully and everything. But I did talk to her before this. We're going to give a discount. It's juliescoolshirts.com. And the discount code will be change, just all lowercase change. And it'll give everybody listening 21% off anything they want.
Nice.
So and 21 is the perfect number because that's Julie's extra chromosome that I don't have. So just use the code change in your checkout at juliescoolshirts.com and you get 21% off. Julie's very generous with the discounts because I pay for all this stuff. So it's
a
pretty
smart
cool.
woman.
Yeah, she is.
That's why she's a smart businesswoman.
But I'll give you, and if you like anything, and if you don't have enough to afford the 21%, just contact me. We'll get you a shirt or a hat or something. We'd love to.
That's love. Derrick just loves people. And, you know, we ordered some about a week or two ago, and my daughter's watching me order. She goes, I want that one. I'm like, well, I'm getting some. I want the love wastefully. Okay.
That's awesome.
And so we got stuff for 5-year-old, for me, and for everybody.
She's got shirts that say, I'd rather be slow to learn than slow to love. Isn't that awesome?
I love that.
She's great, man. Take anything you want, 21% off. Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you for coming. Perfect.
All
right. Talk to everybody soon. We'll have next podcast coming up, but this one, watch over and listen over and over again.
Peace,
Thanks, everyone.
guys. Thank you.